Chip Kelly may be catching on to this recruiting part of the job. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love all day with a National Signing Day extravaganza for you. And we've got Tony Siracusa on the line from Last Word on College Football to break down the Bruins. Tony, how's it going?
Hey, always glad to be part of the extravaganza for signing day.
Yeah, so we started at 10 a.m. We'll be wrapping up about 10 p.m. Eastern time.
It's a long day for you, brother.
Well, it's all possible because of guys like you, Tony.
Appreciate that.
So we get the team reports from individual teams, and that's what makes it all happen. So for UCLA, we've been tracking this recruiting class via you as we do each and every offseason all the way through the previous offseason, and it's a class that's just gotten progressively better and better and better because it was at a point in which it didn't look too good in that lower 3 or 4 rungs of the Pac-12. But as the numbers shake out here on the second of the 2 National Signing Days, number 4 in the Pac-12, number 29 overall. So pretty strong class.
Yeah, when you and I talked on the Wednesday of the early signing period in December, it was a mediocre class. I called it a meh. It was an all right class. Middle of the pack, and certainly middle, 40s at best in the country. Their big signing at the time had been Quentin Somerville, the defensive lineman who was a 4-star recruit. And that was a big flip on that signing day. But it's what happened after that day, because, of course, that early signing period is 3 days long. And all the focus is on that Wednesday because that's the bulk of the activity, as you and I know. But there are those couple other days after that when a little bit comes out here and there. And they got Taiwali Savea, who is also, an absolutely huge get for the defense. And it's interesting because he signed then, but didn't announce until January at the All-American game, which obviously they didn't do the game, but they still had the virtual presentations of players making their announcements. So it was one of those things that you see a few players do now, which is they still want the opportunity to make their announcement on, NBC, network television, whatever the case is. And so they go ahead and sign to hold their roster spot, but everybody keeps it on the lowdown until that, that early week in January when they're making the formal announcement. So there was another 4-star guy, for them to go get, for them to sign. And they got Devin Kirkwood, who was a highly touted athlete out of Sarah High School locally in Gardena. So there was a lot of activity that was happening after that Wednesday when you and I spoke. I know you and I have talked since then. And one of the big pieces of news for them was all 4 grad transfers that they had on the 2020 roster all decided to come back for a 6th year using the NCAA's free year, as it were, and come back for a 6th year. That adds a lot of depth and it adds a lot of experience to a Chip Kelly roster and a Chip Kelly program where he routinely says, we're young. He says that every year. We're young, we're inexperienced, we're growing, we're learning how to win, all of those, coach speak types of things that happen. And so that made a big difference. Britton Brown, the grad transfer from Duke, the running back, being really the key part of that, and Quantrez Knight, the defensive back, those being the 2 key ones. But that was a big deal. And then they hit the transfer portal, which, look, in this day and age in college football, if you're not named Clemson and you're not named Alabama, you better be working the transfer portal because that's just the reality of it. There is a significant part of free agency in college football now, and it happens through the transfer portal. And so they got Ethan Garbers, a quarterback transfer from Washington. He was a 4-star recruit in last year's class. The irony, of course, is that UCLA got a transfer quarterback from Washington the year before also, Colson Yankoff, who now is sitting in the wide receivers room instead of with the quarterbacks. But they got Garbers, and he's a pro-style quarterback. They've got – and Garbers' eligibility is yet to be determined. He's likely to have to sit a year. He's not likely to have immediate eligibility. They got Cameron Johnson, who I actually saw play quite a bit last year at North Texas, a defensive back, and really very skilled in his 4 years at North Texas, great ball instincts, and they got him as well. He was a little small on size, but look, Chip Kelly's defense last year was about 114th, 115th in the country in yards given up per game passing. And so getting some extra help in the defensive secondary, was obviously a big deal. They got Cam Brown, a wide receiver from Texas A&M, 4-star recruit, but the minute Jimbo Fisher showed up in College Station, Cam Brown was barely seeing the field for whatever reason. So UCLA loaded up a wide receiver, and then just in the past 72 hours, let's see, we're at Wednesday, in the past week, we'll say, they got Zach Charbonnet, running back from Michigan, which was huge. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of Oaks Christian here in Southern California a couple of years ago. Had a big year his freshman year, more than 700 yards rushing. Got supplanted, frankly, in the rotation last year. Michigan also didn't play as many games last year. They lost more than a few games to the COVID protocols. And so there wasn't much there. But he's got big game experience. He's a good runner. You put him back there with Britton Brown. UCLA now has, by my count, 9 running backs on the roster. Now, you and I are smart guys. Well, you're a smart guy. I come on here and talk like a smart guy. That you're not going to have 9 when the season starts in September. The transfer portal door works both ways. And you win some, you lose some. You're not likely to keep 9 running backs on the roster. So there'll be some attrition. But nonetheless, you get Charbonnet and Britton Brown back there, 2 experienced running backs for a solid 1-2 punch. And Charbonnet, both of them are, power runners. Charbonnet's got a little bit better cut to the outside. That's not to say Britton Brown doesn't have a decent one. Charbonnet's is a little better, where he can plant the foot and cut. It's a dynamic running back situation for Chip Kelly right now. And you add that into the topic we discuss every year. When is Dorian Thompson-Robinson's year? When does he arrive? He's a senior now coming into next season, 2021. He's a senior. He's a 3-year starter. You gotta produce at this point. All of that to say, this is no longer a young team. It's no longer an inexperienced team. You have to win now if you're Chip Kelly. You have to win in 2021. No more 3-4 win seasons. You got to produce and get to a bowl game with this roster.
And so for you, what does winning equal?
You got to have 7 wins. You got to have it. Look, it's a tough schedule. They've got LSU coming to town, and I realize this isn't the LSU of 2 years ago, but it's still LSU, and they still deserve that. The game against Hawaii is not going to be a pushover. The game against Fresno State is not going to be a pushover, and then you've got the conference schedule. But you've got to come up with this kind of talent and this kind of experience, and you've got the grad transfers even that came for another year, which is a vote of confidence for you and your staff and the program. But you got to produce. You got to have at least 7 wins and a second-tier bowl game.
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet, as you mentioned, comes all the way across country and gets immediate playing time for Michigan as a freshman. Actually, it was, I believe, his second game of that freshman year. They gave him the ball 33 times against Army. Their cupboard was, for a program the stature of Michigan, their cupboard was pretty bare at running back, but it went pretty bare to overloaded in the course of a year.
Right.
Hassan Haskins was a guy that emerged there in particular, and they had a 1-year suspension from a Christian Turner, and then he comes back. So then suddenly they've got a lot of guys vying for playing time. And Zach Charbonnet got all of 15, 20, 25 carries this year, something in that range. Was almost a forgotten man after scoring 11 touchdowns and running for, she mentioned, 700 yards. So I'm certain that Chip Kelly can find some carries for him.
Sure, and you bring up an interesting point when you mentioned that he started as a freshman at Michigan. He was the first freshman running back to start at Michigan in about 45 years. So, that's not an insignificant accomplishment. And, he's going to you look at someone like, look, if you're going to use the transfer portal and you look at someone like him, because he's got 4 years left to play 3 at UCLA. You're gonna look to get him in immediately. You're hoping that he comes to he enrolls in school. He's there in the winter. He's there in February working out. There's been no determination yet in terms of specific schedule for spring camp or a spring scrimmage yet. There will be at some point sooner rather than later, and you look to get him involved immediately because he can have an immediate impact. The challenge becomes, if you're Chip Kelly, the challenge becomes not only do you have to win now, you have to win in 2021, but the roster management going forward and the manipulation of the numbers, because now UCLA has fully embraced the transfer portal, right? They've had success over the last year, 2 years with it, lost some players, gained some impact players. They're dipping into it more now. And you have to look at, when a guy comes from the transfer portal, how many years does he have left? Because everybody watching needs to remember in 2022, so in other words, for the class that's going to sign in December coming up, the world changes again, because you go back to the 85-person scholarship limits again. You got boosted to the 110 because of COVID, and you were keeping players, and there was the free year for everybody. So today's seniors stay seniors for this season. Today's juniors stay juniors for the upcoming season. But that also means you're going to have juniors who will have played 4 years. They're juniors on the football field. They're seniors academically. They're ready to graduate. And so the grad transfers into the portal, you're going to get a flood of those across the country. And yet you're going to have to go back down to the 85 scholarship limit next year. So how do you manage the numbers? Who do you take from the portal? And are you filling in a spot with someone who's got 1 year left? Or are you going after someone like Charbonnet who can play for you for the next 3 years? It is mathematics that makes my brain hurt, frankly.
Yeah, I'll not touch that. You went as far as I think we can take that one, at least between the two of us.
Yeah, it truly is. It's funny. I was talking to Sonny Dykes down at SMU a couple hours ago, and he was going through it. And boy, you just you go down a rabbit hole with the numbers and how it's going to work. And there's just no telling. So you use the transfer portal, but you use it with caution.
Want to remind everyone that we're here talking college football with you all day. It's National Signing Day. We totally understand that 90-some% of the players were already signed in December. Just figured this was a good time, of course, to track those remaining 8 to 10%. So if you're talking the top 300 players in the nation, still about 30 guys out there that were unsigned headed into today. And then also get the lowdown on the programs overall, as we're just a month to 6 weeks away from spring practice. We got TCU coming up here at 4:30 Eastern, followed by Georgia, Ole Miss, and then our Florida State live show at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Tony, we appreciate you stopping by to break down the Bruins for us.
Always glad to do it, Mark.
So keep it right here, everyone. On this main page of the YouTube channel, you'll see the next live stream pop up with our TCU discussion here right now.